Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Tuesday, September the 9th, 2025. On Sunday, my sermon theme and theme of our worship was, why do we worship? It was my attempt at least to try to get us back to the basics of who we are and what we do. Sunday morning has always been a central piece of our Christian faith, but why? Why do we worship? Years ago, I came across a book that I really enjoyed called The Wonder of Words. It was written by an Episcopal priest by the name of Edward Chin from Philadelphia. And he had, short little devotions on a lot of key words, one of those being worship. As he writes, nearly 4,000 years ago, a man named Abram left the land of Mesopotamia, started out for a new land that he had never seen. Abram made that brave decision because God had called him, changed his name to Abraham, made him the patriarch of the Hebrew people, as well as the father of a multitude of nations. Well, as he started on this journey, according to a Jewish legend, he saw the stars in the night sky and said, I will worship the stars. But soon the stars set. Well, then Abraham saw the constellations, said, I'll worship the constellations. But soon they set also. Then Abraham saw the moon sailing high in the heavens, and he said, I'll worship the moon. But the moon also vanished when her season was over. And then Abraham saw the sun, but when the day was spent, he saw the sun sink behind the western horizon. Stars, constellations, moon, sun, all were unworthy of his worship, for all had set and disappeared. And then Abraham said, I will worship God, for he abides forever. That word, worship, says Chin, comes from the Old English word worth, meaning worth, the W-E-O-R-T-H spelling of the Old English word. In a sense, when we worship God, we are admiring him those qualities that are most worthwhile. Christian author George Barna, in a book called Experience God in Worship, says that the main reason that many people in America go to church each week is not necessarily to worship God, but instead to have a pleasing experience. He goes on to say that most Americans go to church to satisfy or please themselves, not to honor or please God. Amazingly, few of the people that Barna's research team interviewed said that worship is something that they do primarily for God. Instead, a much larger percentage of those who attend worship on a regular basis claim they do so for personal benefit and pleasure. But that seems to be counter, of course, to the meaning of worship, of worth. It's not our own worth, but God's worth that we acknowledge and we celebrate in worship. The noted 19th century clergyman Henry Ward Beecher knew he was going to be absent from the pulpit of his church one Sunday, so he asked his brother to preach for him instead. And when the worship service began, it became apparent that the great preacher would not be speaking. That particular morning, some people got up and were getting ready to leave. And at this point, Beecher's brother stepped into the pulpit and said, all of those who came to hear Henry Ward Beecher preach this morning should take this opportunity to leave. All those who came to worship God may remain. And after that, no one else left the church. Marva Dawn, in her book, A Royal Waste of Time, said worship ought not to be construed in a utilitarian way. Its purpose is not to gain numbers, nor for our churches to be seen as successful. Rather, the entire reason for our worship is that God deserves it. Moreover, it isn't even useful for earning points with God, for what we do in worship won't change one whit about how God feels for us. We will always still be helpless sinners, caught in our endless inability to be what we should be or to make ourselves better. And God will always be merciful and compassionate and gracious, abounding in steadfast love and ready to forgive us as we come to him. Louis Giglio said worship should matter to us because it matters to God. Worship doesn't begin with us. Worship begins and ends with God. And God is worthy of all praise from all people for all time. And finally, a pastor by the name of Johnny Cresong once wrote, there is coming a day when witnessing will cease, preaching will cease, in fact, praying will cease, but worship will never cease. The one thing that you'll take to heaven with you, he says, is worship. And so building on or continuing what I began on Sunday with the sermon, Why Do We Worship? I'm going to talk about the 12 reasons that I came up with over the next 4 days. We'll do 3 each day. And second chance to look at those points and maybe look at them from a slightly different angle. Why do we worship? Why do we worship? What is it all about? Well, looking forward to sharing that with you in the coming days. Hope that today is great. Hope your week is off to a great start. And again, hope to see you tomorrow. Until then, take care. Bye.